Jungian model, you have a collective unconscious, okay? So the collective unconscious is where we all are one. And it's very much this kind of hippie new age idea of you have God, God is source, we're all part of God, we're all part of one. And so on some deeper level, we all interconnect, okay? So that's where Jung gets a little bit different than Freud, is the idea that there's something behind everybody that's the same and we're one. You might have heard of Carl Gustav Jung. It's very popular these days to talk about Jungian analysis and Jungian therapy and all this stuff. And he's kind of thrown out there the collective unconscious and so on. But what exactly is this? What's a quick overview of Jungian psychology and its use to us? The most important thing I would say with Jungian psychology is the idea of archetypes, which are kind of like universal images and how we identify with them. I came across an interesting article and I'm going to share it now because they break it down very, very nicely. Okay, let's take a look at the article. Okay, I actually just picked this article up from a site called rhetorico.com, and it seems to be a site where they use AI and psychological behavioral analytics to analyze you. So they have stuff like for HR, for candidates, for executives. You can check it out if you like. I will not comment on it. I have no experience with rhetorico.com, but I just like the article. So let's take a look at the article. Jung's Archetypes and Workplace Question to Reflect. Why do I like the article? Because it very simply outlines some of the key aspects of Jung and why it's useful in the work environment. And there's a test called the Myers-Briggs test. If we take a look at this site over here, 16personalities.com, they got a really, really good version of this test. It's a psychological profiling test. And I'll get back to it later, okay? So let's just get back over here to this article. So that's why it tends to be used a lot for work, choosing careers, this idea of analyzing personality types, but it's also useful for all sorts of aspects, okay? So let's have a look here. All right. Jung identified 4 psychological functions: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. I'll get back to this later with the Myers-Briggs thing, okay? Jung's work on personality impacts the field of personality research, also impacts you and how you navigate the workplace. So we had this thing called the Big Five. You might have heard this, the Big Five personality test. And they talk about extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, neuroticism, and openness to experience, okay? So what the hell is this? Well, we got extroversion and introversion. Introversion is more, do you like being with yourself? You don't like maybe mingling so much with other people. You get recharged around yourself. Extroversion is you get recharged around others. Many of us are kind of in between the two as it happens. So the typical introverted person likes being on their own. A great example would be Einstein was an introvert. Apparently he changed university in America just to get less classes because he didn't want to interact with the students. So, you know, we tend to have this image of this cartoonish Einstein being like great fun, but really the guy was really an introvert. He was supposed to sit there and just study and do his work. Newton is another great example of this. We got agreeableness. Women tend to be more agreeable than men. I work in the teaching profession, and it's an agreeable profession. Teachers tend to be agreeable type people. They tend to be team oriented. Before this, I used to work in sales and marketing, and it's far more aggressive and less agreeable. Okay. So different industries will have different levels. Different people will have different levels. Men tend to be less agreeable than women. Geniuses, for example, tend to be highly disagreeable. Okay. They tend to be the Einsteinian type, you know, off you go, I'm doing my work. Okay. Conscientiousness, whether you know, if left alone, will you do what you're supposed to do or not do what you're supposed to do? And some people do, some people don't. Neuroticism, how crazy are you, basically? And openness to experience, like do you like trying new things or you like being routine? And these Big Five are used a lot for analyzing people. So some of these concepts were picked up by Jung, or sorry, came from Jung's work. So the central idea of Jung's work, he talks about the ego, he talks about the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious, okay? So here's a nice diagram of Jungian idea of the mind. Now, you might have heard of Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud was the mentor of Jung in his early days. And Freud has the idea of a conscious mind and an unconscious mind. In this channel, I tend to say subconscious because it's more populist than saying unconscious, but basically the same things. But the idea is that you have a you who's the ego, and then you have a subconscious or unconscious self, which is the part of you that's not showing. And according to Freud, we are repressed in order to fit into society. And so everything that's repressed goes down there. We can also elaborate when we look at the different mechanisms that Freud talks about. And if you look at the law of attraction, ties into a lot of this as well, which is basically that the subconscious mind, the conscious mind is the master, the subconscious mind is the slave, the conscious mind is the decision maker, subconscious mind is the doer. The subconscious mind as such doesn't have an ego, but there are many mini cells inside there. So the subpersonalities do have an ego, but the main subconscious mind is almost like a big machine, and it basically protects you from things which would upset you. So it represses things that make you fit in. But in the process of helping you fit in, it also cuts you off from certain creative vital energy as well. And it helps you get on with things, and whatever you program it with, whatever images, thoughts, feelings you have repetitively, you're training it to think a certain way, and it will try and produce that in your life. That's the basic theory of the conscious subconscious. Now, the little change with Jung, if you just look here, he has the ego, he has the personal unconscious mind, and the collective unconscious. And so this is the difference. So Freud is like this area here, ego and personal unconscious. Okay. You have complexities, and the complexities or complexes are because of society, we're trying to fit in, and it causes problems because we repress ourselves, we hold ourselves back, and it creates neuroticism. Okay, we become neurotic, become a little bit crazy because we're repressing aspects of ourselves. But with the Jungian model, you have a collective unconscious. Okay, so the collective unconscious is where we all are one. And it's very much this kind of hippie new age idea of you have God is source, we're all part of God, we're all part of one. And so on some deeper level, we all interconnect, okay? So that's where Jung gets a little bit different than Freud, is the idea that there's something behind everybody that's the same and we're one, okay? And this is going to tie into archetypes in a second, right? So he's talking about archetypes, all right? And he has the 4 main archetypes. I'll just whip over here to a second to this is verywellmind.com. They have a nice article here, and they talk about the various types. Okay, so we have if we go back to this one here, the persona, the shadow, the anima, and the self are the 4 major ones. But then we also have the father, the mother, the child, the wise old man, the hero, the maiden, the trickster. And you might think, what the hell are these about? And the idea that Jung has is that there's like templates, personality templates. And it's not just that we have this idea of persona. The Greeks have this idea of putting a mask on a persona, but it's not just persona, it's templates for understanding the world and being in the world. And so we have a social self. So the part of us of work tends to be this social self that fits into work, okay? But we have other things. So we have these universal images. The idea, again, is getting back to this collective unconscious, we could put subconscious, you got the word you like, the collective unconscious, which is basically that they're universal symbols. So in every area in the world you look in, every movies, okay, you'll have heroes, you'll have villains everywhere. Why is every human being has heroes and villains? Why do they appear everywhere? Okay, and it's because they're symbolic, because you go back to this bigger thing. So how we integrate ourselves as human beings is based largely upon how we connect symbolically, okay? So because we're not just a conscious self, okay, a lot of neuroscience will believe we are just an output, that our conscious mind, that me who's doing this, you who's watching this, we're just taking stuff in, we're just an output of our biology created us, maybe perhaps even just to survive. Some people actually believe that. And this is the opposite end. The opposite end is that you have God, and we're all part of little tiny bits of God, you know, Aquinas. Each human being is like a thought in the mind of God, which I like. I think that's very quaint. So these symbolic aspects talk to us about how we are in the world. So the father, for example, is the authoritative figure. The mother is the nurturing figure. The child is innocence, the wise old man, okay, like Gandalf, okay? He's a wise old man. The hero, of course, is the hero. The maiden is usually being saved, although now we have a newer version of the maiden who's a kick-ass maiden. And the trickster is the devil, okay? They're the basic types. But let's get back to these ones here and see how they can help you in your life. It talks about the persona, the shadow, the anima, and the animus, okay? So again, why do we have the archetypes? The archetypes are symbolic images. I put it this way. Let's think, for example, of culture. I remember back when I was studying in college, I had to take a few modules in anthropology. Okay, I never studied it as such. We just did a little bit. I studied psychoanalysis, but we did some anthropology. And one key concept I got from anthropology is that the use of culture it means I don't have to learn everything again. Like I put on a certain type of clothing, it makes me, it has a certain result when I put that clothing on. Culture is like that. Culture is like an overcoat that you put on. Okay. So I give you an example. A policeman or policewoman puts on their outfit. They're now the authority figure. Okay. They've entered into that culture. All right. So the great thing with culture is we can buy into things, and we tend to be symbolic because we're not following the neuroscientist idea. We're just some output of our biology. Rather, we are all connected somehow to God, to this higher power, to whatever it is. And there are symbolic aspects of who we are. And who we are, we should be fulfilling ourselves. And the archetypes are how we understand the world at this deeper level. We also have the hero's journey. We have a guy called Joseph Campbell. He was an American academic, and he did a lot of research on different cultures and so on. And he came up with this idea for stories. And if you look at why is it modern movies, for example, suck so much as they've forgotten the hero's journey. We have a lot of characters these days who just seem to have powers and don't have any what's called an arc, okay, for the character. The hero's journey is you have somebody who is called to adventure. They have little challenges along the way. Somewhere along the way, they get completely lost. They enter the abyss. They just completely lose it halfway through the movie. Then they start toning themselves, then they return, and then they achieve success as they bring themselves to a higher level of being, overcoming the problem, overcoming the challenges. That's the hero's journey. And that's why we like a lot of movies and literature so much, is because the symbolic sense of fulfilling something. And the reason why modern movies tend to suck so much in the present nihilistic atmosphere of Hollywood, they are so much into this, let's be real, let's be angst-ridden. Yeah, but movies are never about being real, okay? Movies are really an analogy for dreams. And dreams, why do we like dreams so much? You know, they're ridiculous, aren't they? But because they're part of this journey. I would say that each human being is on a hero's journey. And we want to be the hero. Instead, we end up being the side character. And we need to work through these symbolic aspects of our life and getting back to here, these archetypes which need integration. So we have a drama. When you sleep, for example, you notice how your dreams are busy and all sorts of stuff, and there tends to be a lot of anxiety in dreams because actually you've got a lot of anxiety in your daily life. And you're repressing in order to fit in. But that's creating neurosis, like anxiety, depression, phobias. What's all this stuff coming from? An inability to connect with others, always in your head, not able to communicate with others, because you're repressing who you are and you're not fulfilling your hero's journey and you're stuck. So let's get back to this and take a look, and we'll get back to that in a second. So he talks about the persona, the shadow, the anima, and the animus, okay? So the persona is who you appear to be, okay? The mask you put on. I saw a very good ad a few years ago, British ad. It was British or Irish, not sure. It was an ad depression. It has these young guys having fun. And then guy goes home and takes off the mask and he's very sad. And that was a very simple, nice way of talking about depression, because a lot of people are depressed, but you don't know they're depressed because you don't tell you they're depressed, and actually inside they're feeling off, okay? So the persona is who you appear to be. And the persona can also be a little different to personas. Like we've got the persona we have with our family is different than the persona we have with our work colleagues, which is different than the persona that we have with our friends, which is different than the persona we have when we meet somebody for the first time, which is different than the persona we have if we're in a life or death situation. These are all personas. So the roles that you play as an actor in life is your persona. Nothing wrong with it. We have a social aspect, okay? So the kind of, the way I always feel it is that we have to fit in. and we need a persona for that. But some people forget that there's another self there. Okay, so persona is an aspect of who we are. The shadow is anything you cannot see. Okay, the part of yourself that you don't like to see. Everybody has a shadow self. And the idea of psychological integration is that shadow self shall shrink. Now, that shadow self always has to be there. Okay. If you get deep into psychoanalysis, for example, they talk about the nexus point. So, say you go into say Jungian analysis or into Freudian psychoanalysis, you go so deep and you get to a point that you can't go further because human beings think in language. And the moment you get to that deep point, words fail and you're gone. Okay. Your ego can't exist outside the language. People take sometimes psychedelics or they have mystical experiences and they go beyond words, and then you have all sorts of crazy images, and it's like you can spend maybe many years trying to make sense of what they saw because they're now into symbolism. They're now into the symbolic realm. Okay. So the shadow, a lot of the shadows inside the symbolic, you'll never get there. Okay. But we should reduce. How to reduce? By the whole idea, I say a lot of this channel is like self-reflecting, reflecting on my experiences, writing a journal, try to make sense of things. And we start saying, hey, I was a bit of an asshole there. That is a great moment because everybody's an asshole sometimes. And being able to see that and work with that. So working on a shadow is becoming more aware of yourself. Anima, animus is basically inside every man is a woman, inside every woman is a man. When you fall in love, you fall in love really with your inner self. The journey is toward yourself. So your romantic ideal, your ideal that you're seeing. Okay, so we talk, for example, so if we look at the definition here, we have the anima and the animus. The anima and the animus is described in Jung's school of analytical psychology as part of the collective conscious. The animus is the unconscious masculine for the women, and the anima is the unconscious feminine side of the man. I don't know why there's some picture of Jose Cortez, but they are. So she has a manly side inside. If you're a man, you have a feminine side inside. This is nothing to do, by the way, with sexual orientation or sexual identification. So everybody has the opposite, okay? So, and it's about integrating the two. So when we fall in love with the anima or animus of whoever, we're falling over our romantic idea, whatever that is the opposite side of who we are. We're actually trying to fall in love with ourselves. We're trying to reintegrate with ourselves. Okay, so there was one of the mythos was there used to be once upon a time human beings which are male and female androgynous, and they have many arms and legs and all this stuff. These are myths, but they're talking about wholeness. Okay, so men and women, and I speak that very broadly as in the masculine and feminine people, whichever way you identify with, sexually, whatever, is no problem. But you're always looking for the opposite to balance. Okay, so the key takeaway, the anima animus, is as a man, I'm trying to balance my inner feminine. Okay. As a woman, I'm trying to balance my inner masculine. If somebody is a transsexual, whatever, it's still the same thing, but it might be reversed, but still balancing the two over. And the thing is to work towards a balance whereby eventually you end up fairly balanced. Okay. If you look at our society, there tends to be a lot of issues with dominance and submission, and one side's over the other side. And this always shows an imbalance. We should be moving towards a balance between the two. I'm not talking about your inner personality, okay, and also society, right? The self is who you really are deep down, and that's very hard to get to know yourself, okay? Okay, so let's just get back to these for a second, these four things. And so we got the persona, the shadow, the anima, and the anima. So if we go back to these other ones here, these are all around us, okay? The people we're relating with and the thoughts in our head and the fantasies we have. But this is in our personal journey. We have an external personality. We have a shadow personality, aspects of ourselves we're in denial of. We have the male-female balance that we're trying to achieve. And we have the self, who we are. And the whole idea of this goes back to what Jung calls self-individuation, which is working towards becoming an integrated self. And if we go back to our Joseph Campbell picture here, The Hero's Journey, it is my firm belief that as children, we are given a thing which I like to call the promise. It's implicitly there. So if we take a look at this picture here, this young boy, for example, very common. Why is it that we have this image of these young boys, he's sitting in his dad's lap driving cars? Very common, okay? And we got young girls wearing their mom shoes and makeup and all this stuff. Why are these things so common? Why is it young children want to act like adults? Because of what I call the promise. The promise means that implicitly we're telling the child, okay, let's say, look, you are the hero and you're going to become the hero someday. Because remember, when you're a small kid, your mom and dad, they're heroes. They're gods. They're wonderful. They're great. And I'm going to be just like my mom. I'm going to be just like my dad. I'm going to be a hero. Okay. So this is what we're implicitly saying in society. And the big shocker we get when we hit our teenage years is we realize my mom and dad are flawed. They are not perfect. Matter of fact, they're nut jobs, probably. Okay. They're crazy kind of silly people with stupid ideas. And well, God knows what they're on about. And we get a bit older, more mature, and realize mom and dad weren't that bad. And actually, I'm pretty much like mom and dad as well. But the point is that promise is broken. And the reason why is very simple. If I go back to this other diagram over here, here. Okay, so what we have is to fit into society, we have to repress ourselves, and it creates complexes. And those complexes create neurosis. Typical things like anxiety, depression, fears we can't put a handle on, an inability to connect with other people, inability to be in the moment now. All of this is because of repression. And so we have to work through this, and we can't unrepress everything, but we have to try and, as much as possible, create personality integration. And the concept of Jung, which I think is very nice here, is the idea that we are actually all connected on the universal level. And we have these things called archetypes, which make it easier to make sense of life. Okay. So because of the archetypes, we tend to identify with this person feels like my mom or my dad, or she's so innocent, I have to help her, or the wise old man or the wise old woman. Okay. To hear, why is it we identify with these things? Because we live in a symbolic order, deep down behind our conscious mind, behind our subconscious mind even. And this is the greatness of Jung, was behind our subconscious mind. Because the problem with Freud was, you guess it's the subconscious, but it's all a little bit depressing. But when we get to the collective unconscious, the idea is, no, there is God. There is something bigger. We are transpersonal. We can connect at a symbolic level. We are symbolic creatures. It's not just about reducing pain and getting on with life. We can be something bigger. We can be the hero. And so working through things like the persona and the shadow and the anima and the animus, we can help integrate ourselves, okay, and find the real self and integrate the real self. And that's the greatness of what Jung, I feel, has to offer. And getting back to this hero's journey, I feel, is we should be on the hero's journey and we should be living higher. The reality is, up to now in humanity, most people are just about getting by. But we can go beyond just about getting by and live a more heroic lifestyle. That doesn't mean we have to be rich, because everybody can't be rich, but we can live a more happy, self-fulfilled life where we're fulfilling the promise. And the promise is, I'm going to be heroic. I'm going to be a hero in my own life. I'm going to be the star of my own life. That's the actual promise that you were given by society, by your parents, by everybody. Okay. One final thing, I'll just go back to the 16 personalities thing. I'll find it here. Oh, here you go. This is used a lot for like helping people find out their, what job they can do. This website is free. They do have an upgraded version as well. And I think it's really good. You should, a lot of information. Some people criticize it's called the Myers-Briggs tests. Myers-Briggs. Okay, so we have the Myers-Briggs.org, and they were a mom and a daughter who used the concepts used by Jung for a psychological profile test. Okay, and a lot of people criticize it because it's kind of an opinion test, and your opinions change, and personality changes. And my feeling regarding Myers-Briggs, any personality test, personality is in flux. We never fully understand the personality. You should not take any personality test too seriously. For all the detractors of Myers-Briggs, I think they're a bit too hard on it. You shouldn't be taking Myers-Briggs as gospel. And if you go and do a psychological test that you picked up on the internet, I mean, don't take it too seriously. I was assessed one time by a professional psychologist, and they spent about 3 hours. So obviously the testing you're going to get by an actual psychologist versus something you picked up on the internet is going to be superior. And even then, it's still an overview. Psychology is always an overview. Don't take it too seriously. But personally, I do think it's very useful. And I would strongly recommend, if you got a free few minutes, do this, get your family to do it. It will help you a lot with things like what jobs to go for and why it is that certain people think differently in the family and so on, and why we're having fights. Okay. So that's all I just wanted to do today, was a quick overview. It's a very, very big, complex topic, but hopefully to give you some introduction to the Jungian archetypes. And I should really give you a picture of Jung in case you haven't heard of him. Carl Gustav Jung. And here we go. Carl Gustav Jung. He trained under Sigmund Freud. He was the golden-haired boy of Sigmund Freud. So if you go back to these guys here, he was like the child of Sigmund Freud, and Freud was like the father to him, or maybe like the wise old man to him. Okay. So interesting, you start looking at all the connections you have with different people and how they are symbolically. And the big takeaway from the day is you are a symbolic creature and you can be the hero of your journey. It's about integrating yourself as best we can. And that's what it's all about. And check out Jung when you can. In general, Freud has had, I suppose, Sigmund Freud, I'll play him here again in case you don't know who he is. Sigmund Freud tends to get more press, as it were, because he was more famous and very practical, and he's a very good writer. His books are very easy to read. Carl Gustav Jung's books are harder to read. He's not as good a writer from the point of view of making it simple, easy to follow. Okay, but that is really what's about. Check out Jung, check out Freud, very useful, and think about the heroes. Where is it here? The hero's journey. So heroes, that's where we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be heroes on our journey, fulfilling our destiny of integrating ourselves, fulfilling whatever destiny our soul is sent us on this Mother Earth. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time.